Something happened in a lab 2 years ago that the mainstream media barely covered. A battery was put through 13,000 charge cycles. It still had 93% of its original capacity. Do the math on that, and you get somewhere around 3.5 million miles. That's not a typo. 3.5 million miles. From a single battery. Nothing. No product launch, no headlines, no Tesla announcement. Just silence. That silence is what this story is actually about. Because right now, in 3 separate labs across the United States and Australia, researchers have independently cracked what the entire electric vehicle industry has been chasing for a decade. Not one breakthrough. 3, each one solving a completely different fatal flaw in the battery. Technology sitting inside every EV on the road today, and yet your next car will almost certainly still use a lithium-ion battery. The same basic chemistry that's been around since the early 1990s. So the question isn't whether these batteries work. The data says they do. The question is something more uncomfortable than that. And that's what we're going to get into today. But first, you need to understand what actually happened in that lab. Because the story that got buried 2 years ago is the thread that pulls everything else together. His name is Jeff Dan. He's a professor at Dalhousie University in Canada. And he is arguably the most important battery scientist alive right now. He also happens to be Tesla's lead battery researcher. A couple of years back, Dan's name was attached to something called the million-mile battery, an EV battery that could last decades, travel extraordinary distances, and cost roughly the same as a conventional battery. It made waves. Tesla confirmed they were close to producing it. People got excited, then it vanished from the conversation almost overnight. What most people don't know is that Dan never stopped working on it. His team kept cycling those cells, kept running the numbers, kept pushing the chemistry. And when the results finally came back, they weren't just good. They had completely changed the definition of what a battery could be. Instead of 1 million miles, Dan's updated cells were now projected to last 2 million miles, more than 3.5 million kilometers, roughly 200 years of average driving. His lab had cycled the experimental cells 13,000 times. After all of that, the battery still held 93% of its initial capacity. To understand why that number is staggering, you need to know what you're currently working with. Tesla's standard warranty guarantees 70%. BATTERY, retention over 8 years or 120,000 miles. The Chevy Bolt offers something similar. By years, shoe 1 miles. That's the industry standard. That's what the entire electric vehicle market is built around. Dan's battery doesn't just beat that benchmark, it makes it irrelevant. And this is where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Because if a battery lasts 200 years, it doesn't just change the driving experience, it changes the entire business model of selling cars. A battery that outlives the vehicle it sits in doesn't need to be replaced. It gets pulled out when the car is scrapped and dropped into the next one. Suddenly, one of the most profitable recurring revenue streams in the EV industry disappears. So, when you ask why this technology hasn't made it into a production vehicle yet, that's worth sitting with for a moment. We'll come back to it. There's one more detail about Dan's battery that almost nobody is talking about, and it matters more than the headline numbers. The 93% capacity figure assumes the battery is being charged from 0 to 100% every single time at room temperature. Most EV drivers don't do that. Most people charge to 80%, let it drop to 20%, and repeat. When Dan's team modeled that more realistic charging behavior, the projected lifespan didn't go up a little. It jumped to 15,000 cycles, with almost no measurable degradation at all. What that means in practice is that, for the average driver using the battery the way most people actually use it, the battery would functionally never wear out within any reasonable human time frame. That's not an incremental improvement. That's a different category of object entirely. But here's the thing. Even if Dan's battery made it into production tomorrow, it wouldn't solve everything. Because the 2 biggest complaints EV skeptics still have aren't about longevity. They're about cost and range. And that's where the second breakthrough comes in. And this one came from somewhere nobody expected. Drexel University isn't exactly a household name in the energy sector. But in a chemistry lab there, a team of researchers was quietly working on one of the most notoriously difficult problems in battery science: how to make lithium-sulfur batteries actually work. The concept had been around for decades. Sulfur is the 10th most abundant element on Earth. It's cheap, it's widely available as a byproduct of petroleum refining. And in theory, a battery built around sulfur could store nearly 3 times more energy than a conventional lithium-ion cell. The problem was that every time researchers tried to build one, it would fail almost immediately. One cycle, sometimes 2, and then complete shutdown. A fundamental chemical reaction was destroying the battery from the inside, before it ever got a chance to prove itself. The Drexel team wasn't trying to solve that problem directly. They were trying to redesign the cathode to reduce the damage. What they found instead was something they weren't looking for at all: a rare chemical phase of sulfur that simply prevents the damaging reaction from occurring. The result was a battery that didn't just survive. It performed at a level that made the numbers hard to believe at first. Energy density of 723 watts per kilogram. Compare that to Tesla's 4680 cell at 244. That's roughly 3 times the energy storage in the same weight. In real-world terms, if you swapped your current EV battery for a lithium-sulfur cell of the same size, your range wouldn't increase by 20% or even 50%. It would roughly triple. A car that currently maxes out at 500 miles on a charge could theoretically travel 1,500 miles before needing to stop. And the cost. This is where it gets almost hard to accept. The researchers calculated the production cost at approximately $17 per kilowatt. Tesla's 4,680 battery runs around $101 per kilowatt. The lithium-sulfur cell isn't cheaper by a small margin. It is 6 times cheaper. At that price point, the cost of manufacturing an EV battery pack drops so dramatically that the sticker price gap between electric vehicles and combustion engines doesn't just close, it flips. EVs become the cheaper option to build. The Drexel battery also held 91% of its capacity after 1,700 fast charge cycles. And after 4,000 total cycles in testing, the sulfur cathode remained stable. That's a lifespan the researchers estimate at around 50 years. Now, at this point in the story, you might be wondering if there's a catch. There is. The battery is still in the lab. It has not been tested at commercial scale. And while Elon Musk's team reportedly began a partnership with Drexel in 2023 to explore the technology, there has been no confirmed production timeline. Which brings us back to that question we set aside earlier. If the science is there, what's the holdup? Hold that thought. Because there's a third breakthrough, and this one charges faster than anything you've ever seen. The Graphene Manufacturing Group is a small company out of Australia that most people in the EV space have never heard of. In partnership with the University of Queensland, they've developed something called a graphene-aluminum-ion battery. And the specification that gets attention first is the charging speed 70 times. Faster than the best lithium-ion cell currently on the market. To make that concrete, a coin cell charges in under 10 seconds. For comparison, the equivalent lithium-ion coin cell takes between 3 and 6 hours. The CEO of GMG has described it as so fast it functionally behaves more like a supercapacitor than a traditional battery. At a vehicle scale. This matters enormously. One of the most persistent friction points in EV adoption isn't the range, it's the time cost of charging. If a long-distance charge stop goes from 45 minutes to something measured in minutes or less, the behavioral barrier to switching from a combustion engine largely disappears. The charging speed isn't even the most interesting part of what GMG has built. The graphene aluminum-ion battery weighs roughly a quarter of what Tesla's 4,680 cell weighs. Tesla's cell comes in at 355 grams, GMG's equivalent, 89 grams. That weight reduction cascades through the entire vehicle design. A lighter battery means a lighter car, which means better efficiency, which extends range without changing the energy storage at all. Then there's the heat issue. Lithium-ion batteries run hot. Managing that heat requires a cooling system that adds roughly 80 kilograms to a typical EV battery pack and accounts for nearly 20% of the total cost of the battery assembly. GMG's graphene aluminum cell operates close to room temperature under normal conditions. The cooling infrastructure, in most applications, becomes unnecessary. You're not just getting a better battery. You're removing an entire system from the car. Lifespan testing so far shows no performance. Degradation after 2,000 charge-discharge cycles, projecting to around 45 years. Compare that to lithium-ion's practical ceiling of 10 to 15 years. With gradual degradation throughout, cost comes in around $25 per kilowatt, compared to Tesla's $101. The battery pack that would cost $6,000 in a Tesla Model Y today would cost roughly $1,500 using GMG's cell. There is a weakness. Current energy density sits at around 150 to 160 watt-hours per kilogram. Tesla's 4,680 offers around 260. The graphene aluminum cell stores less energy per unit of weight.